Like and subscribe. Beyond Antarctica. Chapter 2. The celeb mariner lays skewed on its side against the wild backdrop of the unknown shoreline. Inside, John rallied the crew. We need to evaluate what we have to work with, folks. Todd, an experienced engineer, despite the challenging angle of the ship, had managed to assess the damage. It's a small tear, 2 inches by 3 feet, right at the base. We can fix it, but first we need the ship upright. Bob, what's the status on our equipment? John asked, gripping a bulkhead for support as he peered into the cluttered room. Bob, with frustration, glanced up from a mess of wires and dismantled panels. It's like nothing I've ever seen, John. The drones, the submersibles, everything that relies on remote signals is just dead. There's some sort of interference wreaking havoc with anything that transmits. John leaned against the skewed doorway, his mind racing. Any idea what's causing it? Shaking his head, Bob sighed. Not a clue. It's not just the orientation of the ship making things difficult. There's something out here, something about this place that's jamming us. Bob, a man of considerable girth, and with the ship's current angle and with the equipment and tools shifted, making it nearly impossible for him to maneuver, said, I might be able to figure it out if we was upright, sir. I simply can't move around in here. John nodded. Keep at it, but be careful. We can't afford any injuries. Is there anything you need that might help? Bob said, a cold beer would be nice, with a smile, and a stable workspace couldn't hurt. John says, I'll fetch you a beer. You earned it, and we are working on leveling the ship. Just do the best you can until then. Bob replies, Roger that, Captain. John joins the rest of the crew. Bick says, tell me Bob got comms up and running. Bad news, boys. Bob says comms is a no-go, and worse, he has to figure out why first in order to fix it. Finally, some good news, Bick announced with a slight grin, prompting bewildered looks from the crew. John couldn't help but respond. Good news? How the hell is any of this good news, Bick? Bick chuckled, the corners of his eyes crinkling in amusement. Well, I have 2 daughters, 14 and 16 years old. If they can't contact me, they can't ask for anything. Bick smiles ear to ear. So I might not go broke after all. His laughter was contagious. Kim, the ship's doctor and ex-combat medic who also happened to be John's daughter, couldn't hold back her reaction. She choked on the water she was drinking, spitting it out in surprise. Wiping her mouth, she tugged at her white lab coat, a stark reminder of her dual role as both crew and family. Growing up as an only child, she knew all too well how to play her dad. Hey, Dad, tell him that's not true, she joked, nudging John playfully. Daughters don't get special treatment at all. Her comment drew a round of chuckles. And by the way, she added, shifting back to her professional demeanor, everyone's fine, just a few bumps and bruises to report. Tony spoke up, the ship's mechanic. He was a man of few words, his quiet demeanor shaped by more than just his inherent shyness. As a young boy vacationing off the coast of Australia, a shark attack had left him scarred, part of his face permanently altered. These physical reminders of the trauma made him reluctant to face people directly, often keeping his head low, his face obscured by the hood of his ever-present black hoodie. Just then, Tony pointed towards the horizon at the grayish sky. Look at the sky, he said, his voice low. The sun rays are hitting the clouds, making them glow, and the light is trickling through like rain, but they're drops of light. The crew, drawn by Tony's unusual assertiveness, turned to gaze out the windows. The sight that greeted them was surreal. Bands of light pierced the mist, creating a spectral display of radiant colors that seemed to dance across the sky. The mesmerizing scene captured everyone's attention, a rare moment of beauty in this harsh wilderness they found themselves in. Bick, moved by the scene and Tony's rare intervention, placed a reassuring hand on the mechanic's shoulder. It's incredible, Tony. Thanks for pointing it out, he said, giving a gentle squeeze, acknowledgement of Tony's often unseen contributions to the crew's morale. John says, okay, boys, first thing we need to do is upright this ship. Bick says, this is a big ship, John. We have 12 people. I don't think physics works like that. John replies, you're the king of Wall Street in the boardroom. Let me worry about righting the ship. Bick nods, understanding he hired this man for a reason. All right, everyone, here's the plan to get the celeb mariner back upright, John began, pointing to the sketches that depicted the ship and its current predicament. We're going to use a combination of mechanical advantage and good old-fashioned manpower. First, we need to stabilize the ship to prevent any further shifting. We'll do this by securing the hull to the large rocks and any sturdy trees nearby using the strongest cables we have, he explained, highlighting the areas on the blueprint where the cables would be anchored. Next, we'll utilize the winches on board to create a series of pulleys. We'll attach these pulleys to the trees along that ridge. John pointed out the window to a line of tall, strong-looking trees, and back to the ship. By cutting the trees in a controlled manner, we can use gravity and the weight of the trees falling to help pull the ship upright. John paused to make sure everyone was following. We'll need to dig a trench on the beach side where the ship needs to pivot. This will help guide her back gently without causing damage to the hull. It's crucial that this trench is deep and wide enough to accommodate the shift without resistance. Finally, he concluded, once we have the ship upright, we'll need to quickly stabilize it in the upright position using additional supports from the trees we cut. We can't have her tipping back or shifting unexpectedly. John looked around at the crew. It's going to require precise coordination and a lot of effort from all of us, but I believe we can do it. Let's prepare our roles and get to work. Safety is our priority, so let's watch out for each other and communicate every step of the way. As John finished outlining the plan to right the ship, Kim, always one to consider all possibilities, voiced her concern. Isn't there another way, Dad? That seems like a lot of work. John turned to face his daughter. We can't just head into the jungle looking for civilization with just a shotgun and a sidearm, not knowing where to go or what we might find. Our other choice is to follow the beach in either direction, carrying what we can to survive, leaving behind our only form of shelter in the hope of finding help. Or we could take the mini-sub. It'll hold all of us, but we'd maybe have enough food for a couple of days at best. It's too risky. He paused, letting his words sink in, then continued, This ship is our best chance. Righting it will be hard work, yes, but it will keep us safe and together. We cannot count on being rescued in this situation. This is our best shot at not just surviving, but rescuing ourselves, and I rather put faith in my own two hands, doing the labor, than putting them together only in prayer. I will do both. Kim nodded, acknowledging the wisdom in his words. As the crew of the celeb mariner ventured outside to assess the feasibility of John's plan to right the ship, they were startled by the sudden, violent rustling of the trees. Loud noises echoed from the dense forest, causing an instinctive retreat toward the safety of the vessel. "Get back inside," John commanded, his voice sharp with urgency as the tops of the trees began swaying violently back and forth. But just as they turned to retreat, "Wait, look!" Bick called out. A loud roar, deep and resonant, stopped them in their tracks. They all stared in confusion toward the source. From the thick tree line emerged a massive head, followed by another and then another. It was a herd of brontosauruses, or so they seemed, creatures from a bygone era. Bick, awestruck by the sight, whispered in reverence, "Look how majestic!" As they watched, smaller critters burst from the edge of the forest, scurrying across the sand and hugging the line of the jungle. The presence and noise of these large creatures seemed to have scared the other animals, a detail that did not escape Bick's observant eyes. Amid the spectacle, Kim, half joking, half serious, turned to her father. "Dad, let's use them to upright the ship," she suggested. John laughed heartily at the suggestion. "For a smart girl, you're so silly at times. Are you willing to go over and try to lasso one of those things, mount it, and bring it over here?" he teased, his tone light to match his daughter's, handing her his sidearm with a smile. "Hun, you're the medic. You wait here and keep an eye out and protect others. That's what you do best." Kim gives her dad the evil eye, a look she has fine-tuned over the years into a sharp-edged weapon. "You mean stay on the boat safe, shielding me from harm. Just say it, Dad. Don't sugarcoat it. You're trying to protect me." Kim screams, "Let me pull my own weight, Captain," standing tall and firm, squaring up with her father eye to eye. toe to toe. Bick, passing by, says, "You're right, Kim," as he pats her softly on the shoulder and turns, but as he starts to walk away, says, "Being a father of 2 daughters, I have to side with John on this one. You stay with the boat, and it's not for your safety. It's for John's sanity. I need him out here, at 100%. "Listen, people," Bick announced. "I think those big boys over there chased off all the little critters, meaning no raptors. Get to work. Tony, take the shotgun and cover the others." 2 weeks of meticulous preparation and hard work culminated in a morning filled with tense anticipation. The crew of the Celeb Mariner stood ready at their assigned stations, each person's role crucial to the success of the operation to right the ship. Bick positioned himself near the winch controls. The ship's winch was ready, connected through a series of complex pulleys to the tall, sturdy trees they had carefully selected for this purpose. On 3, 2, 1, and at 1, he activated the winch. A deep rumbling sound filled the air as the trees began to topple. The ropes, strained under the force, pulled taut against the bulk of the ship. The Celeb Mariner groaned, its structure protesting as it slowly began to shift, the creaking of its frame sending chills down their spines. On the beach, Tony and Todd hammered stakes deep into the sand. These stakes were critical, designed to secure the ship's new position and prevent any backsliding that might undo their hard work. After a long day of grueling work to fix the ship, the crew took a well-deserved rest. The next morning, as Todd and the others finished up the repairs, John walked past Kim, who looked concerned. "Dad, we might have a problem. Tony has been at the water's edge for over an hour. You know he creeps me out," she said. "There is just something not right about that guy." "Honey, Tony is fine, I keep telling you. I would not trade that boy for a dozen others, even if they were recommended by God himself." As he approached Tony, being sure not to gaze his way, John stood beside him, both staring out at the vast ocean. "You see them, sir?" his voice low. "See what?" John responded, squinting towards the horizon. "That way. Wait for it." Tony pointed, his gaze fixed. Soon, a cloud or column of moist air was forcefully expelled through the blowholes of numerous whales. "Hundreds of them, maybe thousands," Tony murmured, with awe in his voice. John's eyes widened in amazement. "It's been a non-stop flow for over an hour. They're migrating, I would guess." "Wow," John exclaimed, memories flooding back. "My great-grandfather used to tell me about the great migrations of the humpback whales. But these numbers even outshine the tall tales he used to tell us growing up, off the coast of Maine on his old fishing boat." Just then the serene scene took a dramatic turn as the beast that chased them to the beach breached the water, taking out a whale. 2 more surfaced and did the same, then another, quickly turning the ocean's surface into a blood-red tide. "Yeah, I think it's their breeding ground," Tony noted, "and those beasts are taking advantage of it. We will need to wait a few more weeks to let the whales move on, and I bet the predators will move with them. Our blue belly boat is not ideal for these waters at this time, sir." John turned away from Tony and started walking back to the others, calling over his shoulder, "As always, Tony, your wisdom does not fall on deaf ears." Since the trees were cut, John ordered the crew to fortify the ship's hull with logs. They worked tirelessly, the logs adding another layer of armor around the ship's hull, a crude but effective fortification against the unseen threats that prowled the icy waters beneath them. As days merged into weeks, their work was finally done, the ship ready to launch. Not to put everyone at risk, John took on the task of scouting the cove and the surrounding waters in the mini-sub to see if it was clear for them to launch. During John's scouting expedition, as he navigated through the cold, dark waters, the submarine's lights suddenly illuminated a gruesome scene. Whale carcasses strewn across the ocean floor, the remnants of the recent predatorial feast witnessed from the beach. John watched as a massive creature emerged from the gloom. It was an apex-bottom feeding predator, its powerful body designed for efficiency and lethality in these deep waters. The creature, likely disturbed by the intrusion into its feeding grounds, was engaged in devouring what remained of the whales, tearing through blubber and bone with ease. The sudden flood of lights from the sub seemed to startle the creature, and it paused, It circled the carcasses warily, its movements graceful yet menacing. It noticed the submersible. In a display of territorial assertion, the creature charged, propelling itself with powerful tail strokes. John realized the imminent danger. Reacting quickly, he maneuvered the sub, attempting to put more distance between himself and the creature. The sub's agility was tested to its limits as John navigated through rock formations and the uneven sea floor, trying to use the natural landscape as a barrier between him and the pursuing behemoth. Just as the distance seemed to widen, the creature made a swift, protective swipe at the intruder, its massive tail smashing into the water near the sub, sending shock waves through the liquid medium. The sub rocked violently from the impact, the lights flickering from the sudden jolt, as John's mini-sub burst through the surface of the water. Safe but visibly shaken, he maneuvered the sub toward the Celeb Mariner, where the crew was ready to hoist it back onto the deck. Once securely aboard, John climbed out, his legs slightly unsteady. The crew crowded around, their faces etched with concern. Without waiting for questions, John recounted the harrowing encounter with the deep-sea Leviathan. After a brief pause to let his words sink in, John turned to Bick, an attempt to lighten the mood with a bit of humor. "Hey, Bick, how long would it take you to eat 20 fish sandwiches?" he asked, an eyebrow raised in amusement. Bick, caught off guard by the question, gave John a puzzled look. "I don't know. 4 hours, maybe. A full day." "Why?" he replied, his curiosity piqued. John's expression turned serious. "Because we have a beast down there finishing up his whale sandwiches. We need to outweight him. We leave in 4 days," with Bick giving him a nod of understanding. The crew exchanged glances, the gravity of the situation dawning on them. The ocean around them was not their old Pacific stomping ground. They were no longer the apex predator on the ocean. A surreal feeling swept over them all as they went to their individual quarters, dreaming of the day they might dare leave the cove. This is not goodbye, nor the end. Until the story continues, my friends. B.N.Rocker.